Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another modern video. And today, we're going to be talking about the best modern cards in Modern Horizons 3. So, a couple things before we hop into the list here. So, there's a lot of really strong cards in this set. So, there's definitely going to be some that I missed. So, if you're thinking, oh, hey, why is X, Y, and Z not in this list? That card's really good. You're probably right. The card is probably very, very good. But unfortunately, there was just some cards that I was not able to fit in this list. I mean, as I was going through the entire set, there were a lot of cards that I really wanted to include in this list. But I did not, unfortunately, just because, whereas they're really strong, I don't quite think they're a top 15 card. But the other thing is, though, is it's Modern Horizons. You never know what's going to happen. There's a card that probably is going to go under the radar that everyone missed, and then all of a sudden it's going to be one of the better cards in the modern format. It always seems like that's how it goes, especially with Modern Horizons sets. So, all right, I've got 15 cards that we're going to be talking about today, and I'm very excited to talk about them. So let's go and hop into the list here. So number 15, I have Phyrexian Tower. So Phyrexian Tower, I think, is just going to be one of those cards that, like random creature decks are going to play it to, get an extra mana out of it. But I think, Yogg sack decks are going to also play it as well. I think that this is just going to be one of those cards where, how, there's, Boseiju and Takenuma, all the channel lands, and it's basically free lands that people play. I think that's going to be Phyrexian Tower. I think a number of different decks are going to play Phyrexian Tower for X, Y, and Z reasons, just because it's good. Being able to sacrifice a creature and add 2 black is pretty darn strong. So I definitely expect Phyrexian Tower to be pretty, very common card for the most part in the rest of the metagame, pretty much until the end of time, for the most part, with Phyrexian Tower. So, Phyrexian Tower is my number 15 card. So, number 14, I have Ulamog the Defiler. Spoiler alert, it is the only Eldrazi I have featured on this list. I think all the Eldrazi are pretty strong. Kozilek seems a little bit underwhelming, but I still think it's pretty good. But I think Ulamog has the potential to be the most back-breaking for the most part. Obviously, exiling half your library, enters the number 1/1 counters equal to the greatest mana value, and has Annihilator X, where X number 1/1 counters on it. So Ulamog is really, really good. And that's why I have it as number 14 on my list. Number 13, I have Flage, Titan of Fire's Fury. So I think this is going to be pretty good. And I'll be honest with you, it's not as good as Uro. It's not as good as Uro, but I think it's a lot better than Kroxa, though. I think just being able to have the recurring Lightning Helix is going to be really, really good. What decks are going to play this? It's probably going to be a bunch of the Omnath piles that are playing multicolor shenanigans. I think those are the decks that are going to take the most advantage of Flage, but I think this card is really, really good. Again, I wouldn't be surprised down the road if we're wow, Flage, oh my god, that card is just so good because you just get so much value. Like a Lightning Helix, every time it attacks is kind of ridiculous. So, Flage, I really do like this card, and that's why it's number 13 on the list. So, number 12, I have Toxic Deluge. I feel like this is a card that not a lot of people are talking about. I've always wanted Toxic Deluge in the format just because, I used to play a lot of Legacy, and it was always so good. I'm like, man, Toxic Deluge, we should get this in Modern. And then when Modern Horizons 1 and 2 came around and it wasn't in there, maybe they're not going to do it. But they finally did it. It is now here in Modern Horizons 3. I think it's going to be really good. Pretty much, if you're playing a black deck, I think you're going to be playing Toxic Deluge. The card is very, very strong. Sure, you got to pay some life, but being able to wrap the board for only 3 mana is really, really good. So definitely a huge fan of Toxic Deluge. We'll see what happens with it moving forward. All right, number 11. I have Harbinger of the Seas. It's a Blood Moon, except its non-basic lands are islands. I do think people are overvaluing this card just a little bit. The main reason being, it's the same thing as Magus of the Moon, it's coming into play, you float your mana, and then you kill it, and, it's kind of the same thing. One thing that is important, though, is at least with, against a number of different decks, if they Blood Moon, at least it's okay, well, I have my red mana, so if I have, my Unholy Heat or my Lightning Bolt, I'm kind of okay with that, which obviously that's not going to be the same with Harbinger of the Seas. Now it's oh gosh, now they're islands. I can't even cast my Lightning Bolt, for instance. So it's going to be a little bit interesting. Basic Mountain might have relevance in this format. We'll see what happens, but I have Harbinger of the Seas at number 11 on my list. Shout out to the Merfolk players. You guys earned this one, I suppose. So, all right, number 10. Number 10, I have Winter Moon. I love Blood Moon. I played a lot of Blood Moon for a long time in the modern format, and this is kind of like that. Players can't untap more than one non-basic land during their untap steps. Obviously, it's an artifact, so that way pretty much anybody's going to be able to play it. Definitely a huge fan of Winter Moon. I think, again, it's just going to be one of those sideboard cards, or even mainboard cards, potentially. That's just going to be really good, and people are going to play a ton of it. So, Winter Moon is number 10 on my list, and now we're in the top 10, so we're going to be hitting some really, really strong cards here. So, number 9, I have Kozilek's Unsealing. So this is a little bit of a prediction for me more than it is like a for sure this card's going to be really, really good. But I do think this card's going to be really good. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4, 5, or 6, make 2 spawn creatures, not scions. And then whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, draw 3 cards. So when we're talking mana value 7 or greater, of course we're talking about Sojourner's Companion. We're talking about, you know, all the really good 7-drop artifact creatures that are just gonna, you know, draw 3 cards. Oh, I'll cast a Murren Force. I'm gonna draw 3 cards. That's where I think this card is really, really gonna be good. So we'll kind of see what happens. We'll see if it ends up actually being really good, but I do think this card is gonna be strong. So that's why I currently have it at number 9. You know, in a year from now, you could be like, wow, Commander Crane, you really missed the mark on this card. But if it's really good, then I was kind of right. So we'll see what happens. So number 8, I have Flare of Cultivation. This, I think, in my opinion, is the second strongest flare in the cycle. This card's really good. It's a free cultivate, essentially. You put your land into play with Grazer, you sack the Grazer, you flare Cultivation. I think this card is really, really good. We'll see what happens with flare Cultivation. I know some of like the big, you know, big YouTube, you know, Magic guys are thinking that this card's like one of the best cards in the set, and it definitely is, but they're thinking it's like top 2 or 3. We'll kind of see what happens, but I really do like Flare of Cultivation. I think this card is going to be very, very solid in the format. So, Flare of Cultivation is number 8. Number 7, I have Sink into Scepter, Stupper. It's not Scepter, but not even really just this. It's mostly just the multi-face, you know, the double-sided cards, obviously. The land side, which I didn't put a picture of that, but you can pay 3 life to have it under untapped. I think it's going to be really, really good. I think this one is probably the best one, at least in terms of the spell that's on the front side. But I think all those lands are going to be really strong. Obviously, we have the dual lands as well. The dual lands, you can't pay 3 life to have enter untapped, but they're still really, really good. So, you know, Goblin Charbelcher decks might end up being pretty good, but, you know, there's a chance that maybe, for instance, like Murktide just wants to play a free one of these because they can play the land. Sure, they got to pay 3 life, but, you know, if they mill it with Darcy, for instance, it counts as a non-land, which is pretty sweet. So we'll kind of see what happens, but I think this entire cycle is going to be very, very good in the modern format. So, number 6, I have Amped Raptor, which, I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this card. A lot of this comes from when I first saw the card. I'm like, wow, it's basically like a free 2/1 first striker. That's pretty solid. That's not bad. A lot of the Magic hive mind people think that this card is secretly the best card in the entire set. I kid you not. And it is really, really good. You get the 2 energy, then if you cast it from your hand, you exile the cards from the top of your library, yada, yada, yada. So, you know, with a lot of decks, for instance, like Jund Saga, you pretty much always have a hit with this. You play your Ragavan, you play your Thoughtseize, you play your Oakish Bowmaster, you hit another Amped Raptor, you get 2 more energy, you play your Renin 6, you play whatever. So there's a lot of decks that this is basically just a free 2 mana, 2/1 that also just gets you another really, really good card. So we'll see what happens with Amped Raptor. Again, they think it's the best card in the set. We'll see what happens going forward. And believe me, I love dinosaurs, so I really hope that this is the best card in the format, or at least best card in the set. But we will see what happens, and that's why it's number 6 currently on my list. So, all right, we're hitting top 5 territory here. Some of the best cards in the entire set. Number 5, I have Kappa Cannoneer. I'm not going to lie to you. I feel like people were really hyped about this when it was first spoiled, and then no one's really talking about it since. I think Kappa Cannoneer is super good. Ward 4. That is so hard to punch through. Ward 4. There's really no uncounterable removal spells in this entire format that's going to be able to take out a Kappa Cannoneer. And then whenever it or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on Kappa Cannoneer, and it can't be blocked this turn. So, okay, maybe in a weird scenario, we can like Lithomantic Barrage it or something like that, but that's realistically not going to happen. You're not going to be able to pay the Ward 4 on this thing. It's pretty much just going to beat everybody up. Oh, and by the way, yeah, so I'm going to play an artifact, and then it can't be blocked. It triggers itself for some reason, so it's always going to enter as a 5/5. They're going to be paying, 1 or 2 mana for this Kappa Cannoneer. I don't know. I think this card is going to be really, really good in the format. I think like the 8 cast, whatever they call it, or 12 cast is going to be really good in this format, especially maybe with even Kozilek's Unsealing, for instance, perhaps. We'll see what happens with that. But Kappa Cannoneer is really, really good. That's why I have it at number 5 on my list. So, number 4, I have Vexing Bauble. I know a little, not as exciting for the most part. It's just a niche. Well, not even niche. It's just a really good sideboard card. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. And then for 1, we tap it, sacrifice it, and draw a card. So essentially, all the Evoke Elementals, you guys can get out of here. Nope. Pack up your bags. If you're not paying mana, you're not coming into play. So, Vexing Bauble is really, really good for that. But obviously, it's really good at countering the flares, for instance. It's really good with, what you want to call it, Crashing Footfalls. There's also that, too. So, there's a number of things that are really, really good with Vexing Bauble. Heck, let's even say that Amped Raptor becomes really, really good. Let's say that the card is just tearing up the metagame. Boom! We got Vexing Bauble to help take care of those pesky raptors, that kind of thing. So, Vexing Bauble is really, really good. Again, we'll see what happens moving forward, but I think Vexing Bauble is going to be a very, very good card in the entire, modern metagame. And heck, you can also grab it off of Urza Saga, which is pretty sweet. So, that's why it's number 4 on my list. Number 3, I have Flare of Denial. I think that this is the best flare in the set. Being able to sacrifice a non-token blue creature is really, really good. Obviously, there's a number of different ones you can sacrifice, but I think Merfolk is going to take the most advantage of this spell. I feel like that's kind of the more obvious thing for the most part when you see this card, but heck, maybe that means Snapcaster comes back for a bit. We Snapcaster, boom, we sacrifice it, Flare of Denial. I don't know, we'll see what happens, but I think Flare of Denial is going to be really, really good, and quite personally, I'm not ready for it because, man, nothing feels worse than when your opponent pays 0 mana and counters your spell. So we'll see what happens going forward. But Flare of Denial is really, really good, and that's why it's number 3 on my list. All right, top 2. Some of the best cards in the set, and I think that they're going to make an immediate impact on the modern format. Number 2, I have Shifting Woodland. This card is really good. I remember talking to my friends about the set as it was being spoiled. I'm like, oh, watch, of all the, the mono-colored good lands, green's gonna get the worst one again. Green almost always gets the worst one. Boo-hoo, wah, wah, wah. And then we saw Shifting Woodland. And I'm like, oh, no, we actually got possibly the best card in the entire set. So it has Delirium for 2 green, becomes a copy of target permanent card in your graveyard until end of turn. Activate only if there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard. So not only can we play this fair, but we can do some very unfair things with it. So my first thought was, oh, my opponent, they keep making me, discard all my good late game threats. Oh, darn, I can't play. I can't think of a specific, big bomb I like to play right now, in Modern at least. But, oh man, my big dragon that's in the graveyard. Oh, I can copy it, and then it's a dragon. Kill you with it. But the other thing that's really good is you can do some unfair things with this. For instance, the card that a lot of people keep talking about is Omniscience. You have an Omniscience in the graveyard. Boom, it's a copy of Omniscience combo, which is really, really good. So Shifting Woodland, I think it's going to be a fantastic card in the metagame. I wouldn't even be surprised if the 4 or 5 color decks start playing this, just because Shifting Woodland's so good, and it'll honor untap. They play Triumph, so they're gonna have a forest. So I think Shifting Woodland is gonna be really, really good. We'll see what happens moving forward, but I would be shocked if this card is not seeing a lot of active play in the Pioneer metagame. Now I keep saying Pioneer, Modern metagame. Sorry, this card would be really busted in Pioneer. So all right, number 1, my pick for the best card in Modern Horizons 3 is Ugin's Labyrinth, which I don't think really surprises anybody. Ugin's Labyrinth is really good. It's a soul land. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile a colorless card with mana value 7 or greater from your hand. You can tap for a colorless, but if you exile the card with Ugin's Labyrinth, add double colorless instead, and then you can tap it, return the exiled card to its owner's hand. I think Ugin's Labyrinth is really good. It's a soul land. It's a soul land where you really don't take any damage from, sure, you gotta put a card underneath it, but guess what? It's mana value 7 or greater. You're not gonna be casting that card really anytime soon, assuming you play this like turn 1 or turn 2. I think Ugin's Labyrinth is gonna be really good. Whether or not it's Eldrazi playing it, or some, artifact, 12 cast kind of deck, it could be that. It could just be, I want to cheat on mana. I'm gonna play some Null Drifters in the deck just to be able to exile a card with the Ugin's Labyrinth. We'll see what happens. But I think Ugin's Labyrinth is by far and away the best card in Modern Horizons 3, which I don't think really surprises that many people for the most part. So, well, that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the list? Is there a card? I know there's cards I forgot to mention, but what is your pick for the best card in Modern Horizons 3? Or hey, what does your list, what does your top 5, top 10, top 15 list look like? Just let me know in the comments section below. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Garrett, and Sedaronoki. If you're interested in being a channel member, it's only $1 US a month. You get access to the exclusive Discord and other features here on the channel as well. And heck, you can join the Discord. We can talk more about Modern Horizons 3 if you'd like. Huge shout out to all the channel members. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.